if I want to be, one of the best players in the world, I have to be a good player in every surface.
Carlos Alcaraz just became the youngest man in history to win a Grand Slam title on all 3 surfaces, doing so at 21 years old. Not even Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic can boast of what Alcaraz has done at this age. On top of that, Carlitos has now drawn level in the Grand Slam tally with these legends. And while we already know that Alcaraz's trajectory is by no means ordinary, his Roland Garros title win over Alexander Zverev left everyone speechless for different reasons. Here's the full breakdown of Alcaraz's French Open title run, my tactical analysis, the controversies, and everything in between. There were doubts about Carlos's French Open campaign following the forearm injury he'd been struggling with for most of the clay season. And although many still considered him a favorite for the title, we all knew that it wasn't going to come easily. The tournament was wide open, with all of Sinner, Novak, Alcaraz, Sasha Zverev, even Casper Ruud all having a realistic shot at the title. After steamrolling JJ Wolf in the first round, things were starting to look up until Alcaraz began to struggle against some consistent depth from Jesper de Jong in the second round. Alcaraz made 47 unforced errors, but got through that match in 4 sets after recovering from a breakdown in the 4th to put the match to bed. Seb Korda then put up some fight against Carlitos in the 3rd round, but Carlitos still came through in straight sets in what I thought was an impressive win compared to his previous matches. By the 4th round, Carlos was already flexing his muscles on Felix Auger-Aliassime, beating the Canadian in straight sets to reach the quarterfinals. Alcaraz then faced Tsitsipas in the quarterfinal, and while he'd beaten the Greek in all 5 of their previous encounters, some of us thought that Tsitsipas could push Alcaraz a little bit more this time. But Alcaraz ended up being the one pushing Tsitsipas from corner to corner early on. Alcaraz took the first set before edging Steph out in a second set tiebreak. By the time the 3rd set came, we had already seen the mental aspect of the matchup taking a toll on Tsitsipas. And here's how Carlos closed out the match after 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Second match, Alcaraz.
The match was weird because you would expect Tsitsipas to rely on his serve and forehand more than anything else, but guess who was getting more out of his serves and even winning the shorter rallies? Have a look at this stat. Tsitsipas found problems with Alcaraz's kick serves to his backhand and was also missing a lot of neutral backhands as well. After the match, Steph made this hilarious comment about what it feels like to play against Alcaraz.
I haven't felt like this on the court, and I haven't felt against a lot of players like this on the court. There was some voodoo stuff going on today on the court, like I wasn't able to just get the ball where I wanted.
At this point, you start thinking to yourself that Carlos is maybe just a really bad matchup for Steph. What does Tsitsipas need to do to flip the script, or at the very least put up more fight? Because he doesn't just get exploited on the backhand, he even has trouble executing his best shots against Alcaraz. Now into the semis, we got the matchup that we all wanted. Alcaraz versus Sinner, and personally, I wanted to see 5 sets. Now, I had Alcaraz getting the better of Sinner since he has that edge over the Italian on the slower surfaces, but boy was the match extremely nervy to say the least. As a result, it wasn't high quality compared to the level that we've gotten used to seeing from them. Being a Grand Slam semifinal though, it was the biggest match in their rivalry, but it fell just short of what it promised, at least in my opinion. Alcaraz wasn't his usual self in the first set, and Sinner didn't hesitate to punish him. They then flipped roles in the second set, with Sinner's level taking a dip, allowing Alcaraz back into the match. Or, better put, Alcaraz simply raised his level. It was almost like what we saw play out at Indian Wells. Sinner only hit 3 winners in the second set. By the time the 3rd set came, both players decided that it was time to switch roles again. Sinner began to cramp though, and Alcaraz couldn't take advantage as Sinner raced to a 2-set-1 lead. I should also point out that Alcaraz was also cramping in the 3rd set and needed his good old pickle juice. The 4th set came, and for every question Sinner asked, Alcaraz had an even better response. I mean, look at this. Another thing worth knowing is that Alcaraz's backhand was super solid and even bailed him out as he snatched the 4th set from Sinner with this winner right here. The fifth set came, and at this point, we just saw Sinner fading. Not many of his first serves were going in, and Alcaraz continued to smother the Italian. Sinner seemed to be running out of ideas on how to hurt Alcaraz on offense at many points, and in the end, we saw a frustrated Sinner. I noted a number of things that played out in the match. I felt like the pressure of being the future of men's tennis got to both players a bit as they faced each other in their biggest matchup, but Alcaraz handled it better. Alcaraz is able to produce so many different shots from so many different locations on court, which is something he does better than Sinner. As we can see from the stats here, Alcaraz had twice as many volleys, lobs, and drop shots compared to Jannik. Sinner sometimes seems to struggle to find some rhythm when Alcaraz shows more variation in his game. Sinner won more total points during the match, but it was Alcaraz who came up with nearly twice as many winners as Sinner. Oh, and he was also winning the most important points. After the match, Carlos said that to survive such matches, you need to find joy in suffering.
You have to find the joy suffering.
With Alexander Zverev coming through against Casper Ruud in the other semi, the stage for the final was set. These were the numbers for Alcaraz and Sasha coming into the final. In some ways, it almost looked like an even matchup on paper. But tennis isn't played on paper. The final was a battle of attrition, with Alcaraz coming out swinging in the first set. Putting different heights on his ground strokes, slicing the backhands, and using his entire clay court arsenal and variety, Carlos showed just how dynamic a player he really is. Meanwhile, Sasha was tight early on and struggling to find his range and rhythm. After breaking Sasha to love in the fifth game, Alcaraz seized the first set with this dominant display. But in the second set, Alcaraz got dragged by Zverev in those neutral rallies. Hitting harder didn't help much as Sasha began to find more rhythm. Before we knew it, the match was level at 1 set apiece. The third set came, and Alcaraz's forehand began to break down. We also saw him complain about the court conditions because of some of the bad bounces on parts of the court where there wasn't as much clay. He did serve for the set though, but Sasha wrong-footed him with this beautiful passing shot to get back on serve. Sasha then ended up winning 4 games in a row to take the third set, and the German was now 1 set away from his first ever Grand Slam, just like it was in 2020. Alcaraz wasn't helping his case with 15 unforced errors in the third set alone. Watching the match, I expected Sasha to become more aggressive in that fourth set rather than go back to his default setting with all the momentum on his side. However, it was Alcaraz who would break early on and dish out a breadstick to Zverev in the set. How did one of the very best servers in the world, someone averaging a 75% win percentage on his first serve, only come up with a 46% win percentage on his first serve and a disastrous 22% win percentage on his second serve in the fourth set? It was simply beyond me. Sasha's legs looked like they were starting to go away in that fourth set. Do I need to point out that there was also an exchange of words with his father and some argument with his team at the beginning of the set too? I have no idea what was said, but it looked like the wrongest time for that to happen. But the biggest talking point of the match came in the fifth set when there was a controversial overrule from the umpire. Alcaraz had gotten an early break and found himself in a hole. For context on the situation, the line judge had called his second serve out when he was trying to hold at 15-40, but the umpire overruled the decision. Had the ball been called in, Zverev would have been back on serve, and that could have changed the dynamic of the deciding set. That call seemed to take all the wind out of Sasha's sails, and from then on, there could be only one winner, with Alcaraz getting the W after 4 hours and 19 minutes. I should note that Zverev improved his level in the fifth set, but could only blame himself for not finishing the match earlier. Now, before we talk about Sasha getting robbed in that game early in the fifth set, let me point out a few things that I noticed in the final. Zverev would be pulling his hair out for not having that killer instinct when he needed it. His volleys weren't decisive enough, and that gave Carlos a chance to get to many balls. We've never really known Sasha for his volleys anyway. They are probably one of the uglier parts of his game. Here's one of those points in the fourth set.
Oh no, he left it!
Credit to Carlitos for his athleticism and speed, but he had no business winning that point if Sasha was any bit clutch. Here's another instance right here. Zverev was also missing way too many easy shots in the last set, and at times, it felt like he was dealing with the ghost from the 2020 US Open. Tactically speaking, Alcaraz made Sasha play more forehands, dragging the German wide off the court to his weaker ground stroke. Carlos then cleverly played back behind Sasha as he tried to recover back to the middle of the court for the next shot. Each player had 302 forehands, but Alcaraz had 19 winners compared to Sasha's 5. In my opinion, this was mostly a byproduct of Carlos' strategy, but Sasha could only manage 274 backhands. So let's do the math. Alcaraz was able to find the balance between being destructive and self-destructive on the forehand. As he engaged Zverev, he limited the German's ability to redirect traffic to his much superior backhand. Meanwhile, Carlos was also bringing a lot of variety to the table to neutralize Zverev's power, especially off the backhand wing. That there was the difference. Here, we can see Alcaraz winning more of the longer rallies. In addition to that, Alcaraz hit 20 drop shots, 10 more than Zverev, as he continued mixing up patterns, not letting Zverev control rallies from the back of the court with his cross-court backhand. Sasha was also a measly 6 for 23 in breakpoint conversion opportunities against Alcaraz, while the Spaniard was 9 for 16. A 27% conversion rate was never going to hold up against Alcaraz, who was over 50% himself in breakpoint conversions. More so in a final where the stakes are so high that you definitely want to be more clutch on those pressure points. We saw Alcaraz playing a lot of moonballs against Sasha. And while many people might find that to be an unpleasant sight, it actually seemed effective against a player who struggles to generate pace on his own, like Sasha. The moonballing was also helping Alcaraz take the pace off of Zverev's serve, thereby neutralizing his opponent to do any kind of serve +1. Carlitos then mixed up those high loopy returns with flattened shots when he needed to. Overall, I was super impressed with Carlos' completeness as a player. But now to the elephant in the room. Without being biased, I found the umpire's call really strange in what could have been a Carlos double fault, and I'll tell you why. The line judge called the ball out, and we would later see that the ball was out by around 2 millimeters. Now, we know that the umpire doesn't need to listen to the line judge if he thinks a call is wrong, so let's take that out of the way. Also, we only saw the digital image from the Hawkeye system, which allows around a 3 millimeter margin of error because the Hawkeye technology is only a prediction of where the ball would have bounced. So, on the one hand, it's possible that the umpire might not have been wrong after all, since it was such a close call. But at the same time, who would you rather trust when it comes to the tiniest of margins for a ball traveling so fast off a serve? The naked human eye that saw the ball hit the ground from around 15 meters away, or Hawkeye? The truth is that regardless of the 2 millimeter margin for error, the Hawkeye call should be the easy pick in such cases. That being said, clay is the only surface where you can clearly see the ball marks on the ground, and while umpires are right many times, we've also seen them point out to completely different circles, which only leads to trust issues for the players. I know that the electronic system might not leave players 100% satisfied in the future, but the truth is that it's a big step forward, at least in my opinion. So did Sasha get robbed? Well, he might have been robbed of one game, which would have had some impact on the match. That one game could have changed the dynamics of the final set, but it's almost impossible to say to what extent that could have been. At the same time, it would have been nice to see Sasha become even more tenacious with the chips down and all odds against him, because really, those close calls are always going to be a thing in tennis, and we can't do much about them. At the end of the day, we'll never know how significant a factor that call was in the deciding outcome of the match. It doesn't matter if that set ended 6-2. No one can say for sure what would have happened, so you can't say stuff like even if Sasha won that game, it would have been 6-3 or 6-4. It just doesn't work that way. At the same time, no one should take anything away from what Carlos achieved at Roland Garros. Simply put, the guy is special. He's now shown time and time again that he can win matches and even titles, even when he's not playing at his best. Carlos made this statement when he was 12.
¿Cuál sería tu sueño como profesional?
Ganar Roland Garros y Wimbledon.
And now, here he is at 21, living the dream. Alcaraz is the youngest player ever to win 3 slams across 3 different surfaces. Not only is Carlos Alcaraz the youngest to win majors on all 3 surfaces, he's even done it in the fewest appearances in men's singles, putting daylight between him and the others. It took Alcaraz 13 main draw appearances to achieve this. For reference, look at how long it took these other legends to achieve the same thing. Also, Alcaraz is the first man to win a Grand Slam after winning the semifinal and the final in 5 sets since Roger Federer at the 2017 Australian Open. Roger beat Wawrinka in the semis and Nadal in the final, both 5-setters. So let me ask you this. Is Alcaraz the new 5-set king after Djokovic? I think so because he's now 11-1 when the matches go to 5 sets. His only 5-set loss came against Matteo Berrettini at the 2022 Australian Open, if I'm not mistaken. And now, Alcaraz returns to world number 2, leapfrogging Novak Djokovic in the rankings. With Sinner now occupying the top spot, this might be the new world order, as the big three continue to lose their grip on tennis. I found Alcaraz's win particularly impressive because after that Wimbledon title last year, Carlos seemed to hit a wall and began to fall off. A title drought, shocking losses, and injuries had some fans beginning to ask questions. Seeing how far Alcaraz has come from failing to manage his nerves and cramping against the GOAT at Roland Garros, to winning Wimbledon, recovering from a disappointing second half of 2023, and also from injuries earlier this year, it's crystal clear that Carlos is a champion. Going forward, I reckon that there will be less doubt about what he can do on the court and what he can achieve in his career. The comparisons with the big three are going to continue, no doubt. I'd say that Carlos's win in Paris might be the ugliest compared to his other slam wins, but it only adds another dimension to his greatness. But what are your thoughts about Carlos Alcaraz and his French Open title run? Do you see him defending his title at Wimbledon, and how far do you see him going in his career? Be sure to let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, you can keep up with all the action here on Courtside Tennis by smashing that subscribe button. And if you missed out on our French Open recaps, no worries, I've got them showing on the screen for you right here.